Hey guys, welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I know you both. I've worked with you, Eric, a lot in the last few years.
Many years.
And I've met Karma last year or the year before when we did the Atmos demo, if you will. I'm going to let you tell people out there what what you've done, your experiences, and how it brought you to this stage.
Okay. First of all, we're Studio One LA. We're a mix team and partners in the studio. And we've been mixing in immersive, mostly Atmos, for about 3 years now. So we were early adopters of the immersive technology. And we've been, charging headfirst into it. We both come from long music backgrounds. I was a long-time LA studio guy. Grew up on large format consoles, tape machines. I've worked with really great musicians and artists over the years, and lived in stereo world for a long time, and I've been just very excited to dive into this new technology, especially with Karma. So,
yeah, I'm Karma Auger, and for the last 3 decades, I've been a touring musician, engineer, recorder, tour manager, everything to do with live and recording in those formats. And during that time, Eric was busy in the studios in LA recording the who's who of everybody and anybody. And we met through mutual friends years and years ago. We ended up just getting along perfectly and working on a ton of projects together, and both live records and studio albums and recordings and live parking lot shows, just every kind of crazy situation you could imagine. And so in 2019, as Eric said, we kind of had a meeting here and started talking about Atmos, and I didn't know what it was, and Eric said, yeah, let's go to this AES meeting. There's a whole thing about Atmos. Let's check it out. So we went together, and then we ended up going to a studio and hearing an Atmos setup and hearing some music at Lemon Tree, which was the PMC room in LA. And we both lost our minds, basically. And we just got super excited about the format, and we really wanted to jump into this, and we saw where the future was going. And so we built out the studio in 2019, and we've basically been doing this almost exclusively since. And it's been an absolute joy, and as Eric said, a labor of love to work in this new format, because it is very inspiring to hear music in this way.
Definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about your past experiences before you got into this? Like, Eric, do you want to start with that, or?
Sure. I mean, as you know, we've been working together for many, many years.
Yes.
I moved to LA when I was, late teens, and dove into the studio scene here in LA, and I've had the good fortune of working with, everyone from Ray Charles to David Lee Roth to Pink to Karma and you and
Steve Perry.
All kinds of people.
Dre.
Nice.
Dr. Dre, I haven't done that yet. I would love to. So come from the analog world, large format consoles, stereo world, and I've seen the transition from tape to digital recording, and now I'm kind of diving into the stereo to Atmos as the technology advances, and the music always changes, and the industry has obviously changed a lot over the years in many different ways, in exciting ways.
Definitely. Well, I've always been excited about the way you capture sounds because of your experience in analog, and because you're a musician also, and you just the habit of doing it in analog translated somehow into digital still.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that experience, so they just use plugins or whatever to get the sound they want, and it's not always an organic approach.
Yeah, I can understand that, because the laws of physics don't change. The principles of recording and capturing a tone and using the right equipment for the right situation is an art that, obviously I've studied and learned from a lot of other great people who've been doing it for many years.
I think you're right, though. I think the rules don't change with a lot of the concept and principle of those things. So getting a good sound is getting a good sound.
Yeah.
You still have to get good sound in. You can't just magically fix it later just because you're working in digital and you have plugins, right? So
Totally.
It's all about the chain of things and getting the right mic with the right thing for the right voice or the right instrument and the right placement, the right mic in the right place in the room, and all of those things. Those principles are the analog part of recording, which doesn't change.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you are taking a human performance and bringing that into whatever medium of recording you're bringing it into, whether it be analog or digital.
The mixers that worked on these records don't get as much love as they should because they were responsible for making this music sound the way it is and give us the experience, the full experience of what it should be.
Yeah, and recording techniques back then as well, they would often just put the whole band in a live room and there would be bleed on different tracks, and it had this energy that of everyone playing together. And as an engineer, you have to manage that as well. Make sure that there's enough bass in the bass mic, and how that's going to translate into the mix and all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
So it is definitely, like you said, a real art form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about going from that format of stereo or whatever we used in the past to going to Atmos. What's your process?
Well, having worked in stereo for so long, you have a lot of preconceptions, you have a lot of go-to tools, you have a lot of go-to modus operandi, and they don't always translate into Atmos. There are just certain things you can glue, a certain glue that stereo has that Atmos is about spreading things out, and stereo is about squishing it into two speakers. And so the different tools and techniques that you use for stereo get a little bit undone,
Nice.
in this format. And so it's something it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. Yeah.
I'm sure. How about for you, Karma?
So I am going to launch into a story right now, and I want to talk for one quick second about when the last time we saw a big shift in format happen, which was in the 50s. We had mono, and everything was recorded and mixed into one channel. And if you remember, old 50s cars had one speaker in the dashboard. And then in the 60s, stereo was born, and it was this huge kind of evolutionary step in the way that we experienced sound and music. And really TV too. All TVs all of a sudden had two speakers, and all 60s cars had stereo systems, right? And two speakers in the car. And since then, things have evolved slightly, right? We started with 5.1, then we went to 7.1, and then theaters this is really more in the theater world, not so much in the music world, but also in the music world. There's a lot of people who have built out like listening rooms in those formats. But this is the first huge evolutionary jump where we are now not just mixing channel-based in one particular speaker or another, but actually in a three-dimensional space. And that's what the height speakers give us in Atmos. They give us a possibility to place an object, so we're now object-based mixing in Atmos as opposed to channel-based mixing. And we can place that sound anywhere in the room, and that's really the huge evolutionary step forward. And I'm excited to see how that plays out for the consumer too, and all the different ways that consumers will be able to experience music, like in cars, for example, which is currently happening. As far as tools and as far as moving into this format as a mixer, it was the first time that we experienced Atmos was super exciting. We went to the PMC room, as I mentioned before, and we heard a Greg Penny mix of Rocket Man. the Elton John song, and we both just were like standing there with our mouths hanging open, like, oh my gosh, this really is a jump into something else. And Eric said the famous line, "I never want to hear stereo again." We've been laughing about that ever since.
It ruined us pretty good. It ruined us pretty good because,
Nice.
I mean, you can't unhear that.
I'm sure.
It seems like everybody's jumping on board. Apple's on board. Amazon Music's on board. It's going into cars all over the world in every different, manufacturing country. It's they're finding new ways with, wireless speaker systems like Sonos to be able to upscale your current system to an Atmos system with smart apps that can tune rooms and see other speakers that are on the network. And now you have the tops, and now you have the rears, and now you have everything. And so you can scale up in a lot of cool ways now. And it's really moving forward in a very interesting and dynamic way, and also quite quickly. Things got slow for a second because obviously this all happened at the beginning of the pandemic, which slowed the process of all this down dramatically. But I see that it's unrolling in a very cool way, and I believe that this is a format that's here to stay, and really that will be something for the future of sound.
I seem to remember talking to you a while back about also what different companies call the formats. What are those? Right.
So what's happened since Atmos and these new formats have come out is we used to call 5.1 and 7.1 a surround format, right? 5.1 surround. So what's happened is all these formats now fall under the umbrella of immersive. So these are immersive formats. And then there's kind of, I don't want to call them competing companies, but they're all companies that fall under the umbrella of immersive formats in terms of formats. So Atmos is Dolby's format. Sony has one called 360 Reality Audio, and there's another one called Aura or Aurora.
Or Oral.
Oral.
I believe.
I hope I'm saying that right.
There's also ambisonics. There's all kinds of other things too. I think L Acoustics has a format as well. So proprietary formats with different companies as well.
Nice.
Right, so there's all these formats, and they all fall under the immersive umbrella. That's kind of the name of the general name. And then Apple, when they came out and decided that Dolby Atmos would be their format, they named their format spatialaudio. So spatialaudio is Apple's immersive format, or what they call that sound. Sony calls theirs 360 Reality Audio, that's another one of the immersive formats. But ultimately, they all fall under the umbrella of immersive formats.
So, okay, what is compelling about the immersive format?
I think that the thing that's most compelling is that it's a new way to experience music. It's a way that you haven't heard before, and it's different, and it affects you differently. The sound is coming from all around you. You no longer feel like something's coming out of this channel or that channel. You feel like it really is a 360 space, an immersive space, and the way that you get to experience music as a listener is very immediate and very penetrating. Because we know that music is very spiritual, right?
Yes.
It talks to us on a different level, and this is a format that it speaks to you quicker. It just kind of gets through quicker. You're transported into an experience much faster.